Breaking news! The Red Rangers, Team R403 from Purdue University's AAE251 class, has just developed an unprecedented Mars sample return mission from the Perseverance rover. I'm Nishal Suhas, here to bring you the latest and greatest news. We have project member Shrish Nalatwad on the scene to discuss the beginnings of this monumental undertaking.
Thank you, Nishal. Let's delve into the primary stakeholders of the Mars retrieval mission. Foremost among them is NASA, serving as the public entity of this project. Given the importance of this role, they hold a substantial stake in the success of the Mars retrieval mission. Another key stakeholder would be NASA scientists, who would analyze and collect Martian samples, which would gain insight on the composition and topography of the Martian surface. Adding to this list is the U.S. government, or specifically Congress, who will financially back the mission. To address the needs of each of these stakeholders, we've set up several requirements that will provide the layout for the mission's framework. The most important requirement is that the system must transport the Mars samples safely to Earth without being damaged during transit. Other requirements include the mission should be cost-effective, propellants should be able to withstand extreme temperatures, and much more.
That's very interesting how you thought about stakeholders and requirements. But what are some of the risks associated with this mission?
A significant concern we would have is the failure to reach the Mars transfer orbit. Given fuel leaks or improper thruster burn, the system might not properly enter the planned transfer orbit to rendezvous with Mars. Another main risk could be the mechanical parts cold weld together, causing them to jam. Other risks include asteroid collisions, space radiation, and the system potentially crashing into Mars. To prevent these, we've put in place certain mitigations. For example, we've put extra fuel in the orbiter and lander ascent vehicle to account for the minor trajectory fixes and radiation hardening to prevent radiation effects on electronics.
I'm here with Elena Miller and Jaden Hernandez, engineers on the Red Rangers team. So with the unprecedented nature of this mission, could you give the American public an inside look into the components of your mission design, and also how you generated some of these concepts?
The first step to designing this mission was finding the desired trajectory in order to calculate the amount of thrust necessary from the engines. To accomplish this, MATLAB was used to streamline these calculations. We utilized the patch-conic method to calculate the delta V's for each phase of the mission, as well as the overall mission timeline. Each delta V generally depended on the orbit radius and gravitational parameters for each planet, whereas the mission timeline was dependent on a planet's orbital period, mean motion, and the phase angle. The delta V's were then used to estimate stage mass based on how much delta V was required for each stage in the mission.
Once our team had the delta V requirements of the mission, we were able to research various existing launch systems to determine which one would be a good fit for our mission needs and payload requirements. After conducting some research, we decided that the Atlas V launch vehicle would be the most appropriate. We decided to implement the Centaur upper stage of the launch vehicle equipped with its existing RL-10C11 thruster to launch our calculated payload of 4,200 kilograms out of low Earth orbit. Upon Mars re-entry, the lander stage will be deployed and the orbiter will continue into a highly elliptical Mars orbit where it will use the solar arrays inspired by Hayabusa and OSIRIS-REx to aerobrake into low Mars orbit. From here, the lander will deploy a parachute, and with the help of its heat shield, it will slow to a low enough velocity to safely land on the surface of Mars. The Perseverance rover will then approach the lander, place the samples into the lander's sample return capsule. Then the lander ascent system will launch from the surface of Mars using its single Aerojet 40B engine, and redock using a probe and drogue redocking system modeled by the International Docking Adapter on the International Space Station. The final leg of the mission is for the orbiter and SRC sample return capsule module to thrust itself out of low Mars orbit, back earthbound, landing safely on Earth using a direct re-entry maneuver.
I have just gotten word that we do in fact have final renderings of the final design. The final design will consist of a lander module and an orbiter. The orbiter will use 4 MR-107S Rocketdyne engines with monopropellant hydrazine, similar to that of the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft. The later ascent system will utilize a monomethyl hydrogen bipropellant thruster, the Aerojet R40B. The complete system will be able to fit within the payload fairing of a Centaur upper stage. And the launch from Earth is expected to commence at November 29, 2026, and we should expect the capsule back on Earth April 14, 2030. The team tells me that they've learned a great deal from this project. What they really liked especially was learning how to calculate rocket mass through staging calculations, as well as learning about basic orbital dynamics for interplanetary transfer. And finally, closing words from the team, they learned what it meant to be a true aerospace engineering student here at Purdue, as well as the trust required in each team member in order to make this project a success. And folks, that's the way it is. December 8th, 2023, this is Nishal Suhas and the Red Rangers signing off.